My sister excluded my special needs kids from her wedding and now wants a relationship after finding out she can't have children of her own. I've been staring at my screen for hours, trying to figure out how to write this. My sister Brenda, 32 female, and I, 35 female, were always close growing up. Being only 3 years apart, we shared everything: clothes, secrets, dreams, even our first heartbreaks. She was my best friend, the person I trusted most in the world. That's what makes this situation so much harder. My life changed when I had my twins, Amy and Adam, both 8. The pregnancy was difficult, and the delivery was complicated. They were born 6 weeks early, but we were just happy they were healthy. For the first 2 years, everything seemed normal. Brenda was even their favorite aunt, always bringing them little gifts and spending weekends at our house. The first signs that something was different appeared around their 2nd birthday. They weren't meeting their milestones like other kids. They didn't make eye contact, didn't respond to their names, and hadn't started forming words. My husband Mike, 37 male, and I spent months going from doctor to doctor, trying to understand what was happening. At age 3, both twins were diagnosed with autism. It was challenging, but Mike and I threw ourselves into learning everything we could. We found specialized programs, worked with therapists, and created routines that helped them thrive. Every small victory was celebrated: the first time Amy made eye contact, when Adam said his first word, the day they both managed to sit through a family dinner. Brenda's attitude started changing after the diagnosis. Her visits became less frequent. She always had excuses: work was busy, she was tired, she had other plans. But she still called regularly, and I thought she was just adjusting to the changes, like we all were. Then she met James, 34 male, at a charity event. He comes from old money, and his family is well known in our city. Brenda was instantly smitten. She talked about nothing else for months: how perfect he was, how his family had connections everywhere, how this was her chance at the life she always wanted. When they got engaged 2 years ago, I was genuinely happy for her. James seemed nice enough, though a bit reserved. The problems started during wedding planning. At first, it was subtle. Brenda wouldn't include the kids in any planning events. The cake tasting was adults only. The venue viewings were too formal for children. The dress fittings were too long and boring. I made excuses for her at first. Planning a wedding is stressful, and I knew the kids could sometimes be overwhelming for people who weren't used to them. But then she started making comments about how she wanted a sophisticated wedding, how everything needed to be perfect. She talked about James's family's expectations and their traditions. The real blow came 6 months before the wedding. Brenda came to my house one evening after the kids were asleep. She sat at my kitchen table, the same table where we'd shared countless secrets and late-night talks. She was fidgeting with her engagement ring, not meeting my eyes. That's when she told me the kids couldn't come to her wedding. Her words hit me like a physical blow. She said the venue was too sophisticated, that they might disrupt the ceremony, that James's family wouldn't understand. She talked about how his parents were concerned about having special needs children at their son's wedding, how it might create the wrong impression. I reminded her how far the kids had come. Amy could now sit quietly through church services. Adam had learned to manage his sensory issues in crowded places. We had strategies for difficult situations, and Mike and I knew how to handle any problems that might arise. But Brenda wouldn't listen. She said she couldn't risk her perfect day being ruined. She suggested I leave the kids with a sitter and come alone, like they were some inconvenient pets that could be dropped off at a kennel. When I got angry, she accused me of not supporting her happiness. She said I always made everything about the kids, that for once she wanted to be the center of attention. I told her if my children weren't welcome, neither was I. She got upset, saying I was being difficult and selfish. She stormed out, slamming the door so hard it woke up the kids. It took an hour to calm them down and get them back to sleep. The following weeks were awful. Our parents tried to mediate, but they seemed more concerned about keeping peace than standing up for their grandchildren. Mom suggested I was being too sensitive. Dad said it was just one day, that sometimes we have to make sacrifices for family harmony. Neither of them seemed to understand that they were asking me to sacrifice my children's dignity. Other family members got involved. Some sided with Brenda, saying I was being stubborn and making her wedding about my issues. Others understood but stayed quiet to avoid drama. The divide in the family grew wider with each passing day. The wedding came and went. I didn't attend. Brenda moved to another state with James, and we haven't spoken for 2 years. Life went on. The kids continued to make progress. Amy started reading at grade level, a huge achievement we celebrated with ice cream and a special trip to the park. Adam joined a special needs soccer program and found out he loves sports. We built a beautiful life, surrounded by people who accepted and loved our children exactly as they were. Then last week, everything changed. Brenda called me, crying. She said she'd been trying to have a baby for a year without success. Tests showed she had fertility issues that would make it very difficult for her to conceive naturally. Now suddenly she wants to reconnect. She talked about wanting to be an aunt to my children, about how she's changed, about how she understands now that family is more important than appearances. But I can't forget how easily she discarded my children when they didn't fit her perfect image. How she chose impressing her in-laws over her own niece and nephew. The way she made them feel like they weren't good enough to be at her wedding. Now she wants back in their lives because she can't have children of her own. I don't know if I can trust her not to hurt them again. My parents are pushing for reconciliation. They say people deserve second chances, that Brenda has grown and changed. But these are my children. Their hearts, their trust, their sense of worth, I have to protect that. Am I wrong for keeping her at a distance? For not wanting to let her back into our lives? Update 1. The aftermath of my post hit harder than I expected. After refusing Brenda's attempts to reconnect, I thought things would quiet down. Instead, a phone call from my mom revealed a betrayal deeper than I could have imagined. It started with what seemed like another guilt trip. Mom called to talk about my decision to keep Brenda away from the kids. She was going on about forgiveness and second chances, the usual script. But as she got more frustrated with my refusal to budge, she let something slip that made my entire world shift. My parents weren't just neutral bystanders in the wedding drama, they were active participants. Mom revealed that before the wedding, they had held multiple family meetings about how to handle the situation with the twins. These meetings happened at my parents' house, behind my back, with Brenda and sometimes James present. They discussed everything in detail. How to explain the kids' absence to relatives who knew them. What to say to James's family about me. They even planned how to keep any pictures of the twins off social media before the wedding, afraid that James's family might discover their existence and call everything off. When I pressed my mom for more details, the truth got even uglier. They had created a whole strategy to hide my children. Mom admitted they told James's parents I was a private person who didn't like social gatherings. They explained away our absence from family events by saying I preferred staying home. They painted me as some kind of recluse to cover up the existence of their own grandchildren. Mom tried to justify their actions, saying they were protecting everyone involved. She claimed James's family was very image-conscious and traditional. Having special needs children in the family photos might have caused problems with their social circle. She actually said they thought they were protecting my kids too, from being judged by James's particular relatives. The conversation got worse when I asked about all the times they pretended to be caught in the middle, acting like they were just trying to keep peace between Brenda and me. Mom got defensive. She said they were in an impossible position. James's family had connections that could help Brenda's career. The marriage would give her access to social circles they had only dreamed of. The more she talked, the more I realized how deep their betrayal went. Dad called later that day. Instead of apologizing, he tried explaining their difficult position. He said they had to think about Brenda's future, about the opportunities this marriage would bring to the whole family. When I asked if those opportunities were worth betraying their own grandchildren, he changed the subject to Brenda's current fertility struggles. He had the nerve to suggest I should understand Brenda's pain as a mother. That her inability to have children was making her realize the importance of family. He said now was the perfect time to repair our relationship, that Brenda needed family support more than ever. The next day, Brenda sent me a long text. She finally admitted she knew about all the family meetings. She said she was desperate to make her marriage work and went along with everything our parents suggested. Now she regrets it and wants to make amends. She asked if she could visit next month to start building a relationship with the kids. I haven't responded to her message. Every time I try to write back, I remember those secret meetings. I imagine them all sitting around my parents' dining room table, planning ways to hide my children like they were something shameful. These were family members who had been present for every milestone, who had celebrated every small victory with us. And they threw it all away for status and money. Mike is livid. He wants to cut contact with all of them immediately. He pointed out something I hadn't even considered: how my parents always had excuses for missing the kids' school events or therapy milestones, while they never missed any of Brenda's social gatherings. Looking back, their behavior makes perfect sense now. I feel like I'm seeing the past 2 years through completely different eyes. All those times my parents said they were too busy to visit, were they actually avoiding us? Were they trying to keep us separate from Brenda's new life? How long would this deception have continued if Brenda hadn't had fertility issues? The hardest part is dealing with the kids' questions. They keep asking when they'll see their grandparents again. The weekly video calls have stopped, and they don't understand why. How do I explain to them that their own grandparents were ashamed of them? That they helped hide them away like a family secret? I thought the wedding exclusion was the worst of it. Now I realize it was just the tip of the iceberg. The systematic way they planned to erase my children from the family narrative, the calculated deception, the chosen ignorance of James's family, it was all intentional. And they would have kept it going indefinitely if Brenda's fertility issues hadn't forced their hand. Update 2. Things escalated in a way I never expected. Last weekend, Brenda showed up at our house unannounced. I was in the backyard with the kids, helping Adam practice his soccer moves while Amy sat at her sensory table, when Mike came out with a tense look on his face. He told me Brenda was at the front door, refusing to leave. I found her crying on our porch, mascara running down her face. She said she couldn't handle the silence anymore and needed to see her niece and nephew. When I moved to block her view into the house, she got angry. She started talking about her rights as an aunt, about family obligations, about how much she had changed since the wedding. Then she revealed something that made my blood boil. She and James had started fertility treatments last year, pushed by his parents' constant pressure for grandchildren. When the treatments failed, James's mother made things worse. She suggested they could adopt, but only if they found a normal child. Brenda said that's when she finally understood how toxic their views were. But instead of apologizing for what she'd done, she started making demands. She said she needed the kids in her life now that she knew she couldn't have her own. The way she talked about them made me sick. She actually said they could be her practice children for when they eventually adopt. Like my children were some kinds of backup plan, a consolation prize for her fertility issues. During her ranting, she let slip more details about those family meetings before her wedding. They hadn't just planned to hide the kids, they had created an entire false narrative about me. They told James's family I had anxiety issues and couldn't handle social situations. They made me sound unstable to explain why they never saw me at family events. Mike had heard enough. He came out and told her straight, leave or he'd call the police. This made her cry harder. She accused us of being cruel, of punishing her when she was at her most vulnerable. She kept saying she deserved a chance to be an aunt now that she understood what really mattered in life. That's when the kids heard her shouting and came to the window. Brenda saw them and started calling out their names, waving frantically. Amy, who gets overwhelmed by loud noises and unfamiliar people, had an immediate meltdown. Adam started covering his ears, his go-to response when he's stressed. Mike quickly took them inside while I dealt with Brenda. I told her she needed to leave immediately. She refused, saying she wouldn't go until I agreed to let her be part of their lives. I reminded her how she had excluded them, how she had helped hide them, how she had treated them like something to be ashamed of. Her response? That was all in the past, and I was being unforgiving. The situation ended when Mike came back out and said he'd called the police. Before leaving, Brenda had the nerve to say our parents were right, that I was too protective and wouldn't let anyone else love my kids. As if she had any right to talk about loving them after what she'd done. The rest of the day was chaos. The kids were completely thrown off their routine. Amy kept asking who the crying lady was, and why she was mad at Mommy. Adam withdrew into himself, something he does when he's overwhelmed by too much stimulation. It took hours of their favorite calming activities to get them back to normal. This incident made one thing crystal clear: I'm done. I don't care what my parents say about forgiveness, or what Brenda says about changing. They showed exactly who they were when they thought status and money were more important than my children's feelings. They showed it again when they created lies to hide us away. And Brenda showed it today, treating my kids like replacement children for the ones she can't have. They'll have to live with the consequences of their choices. I won't let them hurt my children again, whether through rejection or through this new, equally damaging form of conditional acceptance. Update 3. The final straw came yesterday. I got a frantic call from the kids' school during their lunch break. My parents and Brenda had shown up, trying to see the kids. They thought if they met them in public, I couldn't stop them. Fortunately, the school followed their security protocols and called me immediately since they weren't on the approved visitor list. When I arrived at the school, I found them arguing with the office staff. Brenda was telling the secretary she was the kids' aunt and had a right to see them. My parents were backing her story, claiming there had been a mix-up with the paperwork. The school had already moved Amy and Adam to a safe room with their aide, following their standard procedures. Mom tried to defend their actions, saying they were left with no choice. They thought if the kids just met Brenda, everything would naturally fall into place. Dad kept talking about repairing the family, about how this could be a fresh start. Brenda had brought presents, talking about how she'd carefully chosen things that would suit each child's interests. The school principal called the police since they had attempted to access the children without authorization. While waiting, Brenda broke down. She started crying about how unfair life was, that she couldn't have children while I was selfishly keeping my kids from having a relationship with their aunt. My mom actually sided with her, saying I was being too harsh. That's when everything I'd been holding back came out. I told them they weren't just trying to see the kids, they were attempting to ambush them at school. They knew about the twins' routines, how they struggled with unexpected changes and new people. They knew this would upset their carefully structured day. They just didn't care about the consequences. The police arrived and took statements. The school filed a report about the unauthorized access attempt. I told the officers I wanted to press charges for their attempted interference with my children. My parents were shocked, as if they couldn't believe their actions had real consequences. They kept insisting they would never hurt the kids, that they just wanted to be part of their lives. I filed for a restraining order against all of them. My lawyer says what they did could be considered attempted custodial interference. We're sending cease and desist letters to ensure they understand the seriousness of their actions. The school has updated their security protocols and added pictures of Brenda and my parents to their watch list. Mike and I have decided to move to another school district. It's not an easy decision, the kids will need time to adjust to new routines and new teachers. But we can't risk them trying something like this again. We've found a school with an excellent special needs program, and we're starting the transition process slowly to help the kids adapt. I also discovered Brenda has been posting on social media about the situation. She's telling people I'm keeping her from having a relationship with her niece and nephew because I'm jealous of her marriage. She's playing the victim, talking about how cruel it is to keep children from loving family members who want to be in their lives. Some relatives have taken her side, saying I'm being too harsh and unforgiving. They think I should give them another chance because family is family. But they're not the ones who had to comfort their children after a stranger screamed their names. They're not the ones who had to rebuild trust and routine after it was shattered. I'm done explaining myself. My priority is protecting my children. If that means cutting off family who see them as either an embarrassment or a replacement for the children they couldn't have, so be it. We'll build our own family with people who accept and love our children exactly as they are.